Receiving a watch from a new Swiss brand is pretty hard to beat. Unless, of course, they send you two. Hi and welcome to Last Watch. There are some days that having a YouTube watch review channel really pays off. Who am I kidding? I'm like a kid in a sweet shop every time the postman drops off a package. Over the last 3 years, I've had the cheap and the cheerful, the good, the bad and the downright ugly. Today, I have something to share with you that sits squarely in the special category. I would say unique, but the brand in question have sent me two. Sadly, I only have them on loan and have to give them back. For transparency, I'm not being paid for this review or receiving any commission, though I may keep the gloves. Singularity, spelled SNGLRTY, is a relatively new Swiss brand founded by Steve Mansfield and Danielle Blunchy. Some 5 years ago, the duo found themselves in a Hong Kong bar, brainstorming over their plans for an iconic watch design. In the early hours and after much red wine, they came up with the concept of a one-handed watch, or as they like to call it, the OHI, the one-hand indicator. Now, before you jump in, I know one-hand watches are not a new thing, and you don't have to look hard to find one. Klaus Botter and Meistersinger are a good place to start, and although beautifully crafted, the issue with their one-handed watches is their accuracy, as you have to pretty much guesstimate the time. What makes the OHI different and a much more accurate time teller was a defining moment for the Singularity brand. Steve, with his engineering background, suggested having a minute disc that rotated in reverse. He explained it to Daniel as such. If the minutes moved backwards, counterclockwise, and the hours forwards, clockwise, then the time would always be converging at a single point. Steve scrawled the idea on a beer mat. It was the defining moment that the pair put their signatures to. In the weeks and months that followed, Steve and Daniel started working on the OHI concept. A year later, in 2017, they had their first prototype. With crowdfunding in 2018, they delivered their first watches to customers. The brand was born. I'm doing my best here to be concise, as I have two watches to look at, and I'd like to keep the review at a palatable duration. If you want to learn more about the history of the brand, then you should check out the Singularity website. I'll put a link in the video description below. The two watches I have in hand are the OHI 2 here on the left, known as the Red Accent, and the OHI 4 on the right, sold as the Grey Eminence. Both are deemed as premier editions. Apart from the fairly obvious differences in their dials, they share the same case, but what makes them truly different is the movements within. The OHI 2 has a Sellita SW200, a 26 dual movement that runs at 28,800 beats an hour, with a power reserve of 38 hours and an accuracy between plus or minus 12 seconds a day. This one is running dead on time. The OHI 4 is powered by the slimmer SW300, a 25 dual movement that also runs at 28,800 beats an hour, but with a 42-hour power reserve and a much better accuracy rating of plus or minus 4 seconds a day. Though this one is running slower than expected, no doubt due to its time on the road between watch reviewers. The SW300 has a rhodium coating and is decorated with pelage circular graining. It also has Côte de Genève on the rotor. Okay, I've jumped ahead a little here by discussing the movements, but the different calibers do have an effect, though ever so subtle, on the case dimensions. They share a 40.5mm diameter, 21mm lug width, and a 47mm lug to lug, but they differ in their thicknesses. The OHI 2 is 12.2mm, whereas I measured the OHI 4 a little slimmer at 12mm. The Singularity specs quote 11.8mm, and indeed the OHI 4 could be slimmer still had it not been topped off with a double dome sapphire crystal. The OHI 2 comes with a flat sapphire crystal. Both crystals come with 7 layers of anti-reflective coating on their interior and exteriors. There's also an additional undisclosed hard coating on the exterior of both crystals to prevent scratching of the AR layers. The Singularity case is made from the industry standard 316L stainless steel. It has a pipe hand shape that is predominantly very finely brushed along the mid-case, bezel and caseback, but has a fine polished edge where the three meet. The lugs turn down below the caseback, probably a little more than they should, as they project the watch from the wrist. The top of the lugs have a mirror polish and what I would term as stirrup tips, as the Singularity has done away with your typical spring bar in favour of what they call a crossbar system with a tapered pin that slots into place before being tightened with a hex screw. It's still a fiddly affair, but reassuringly secure, maybe a little bit overkill for a non-tool watch. The crown is a rather dainty affair. It's quite slender, with a defined coin edge knurling. Its outer edge is polished and engraved with a bold Singularity logo, which I like a lot. The caseback of both watches have a brushed finish. The red accent sporting the SW200 has a noticeably thicker backside when compared to the SW300 Grey Eminence. You can see it also sports a thicker bezel. Both casebacks are held in place with 4 hex screws and have a mineral glass display window, allowing you to see their respective movements. The SW300 is by far the prettier of the two, but I'd like to see more of it. I suspect the window frame has been kept deliberately small to aid in the watch's 100 meter water resistance. Once again, we get to see the Singularity logo, this time in deep red at the centre of the display window. The caseback has an abundance of engraved lettering, including the Singularity branding, and the reference to its protected patent for the OHI system, its water resistance and serial number, and its Premier Edition number. There's also a bold statement, Swiss Reimagined. The strap of the Singularity comes in half a dozen no-cost leather options, with a polished, patented comfort buckle and a U-shaped deployant clasp, with a reverse fitting not unlike the Seiko Saab Cocktail Time. There's no visible branding, as the Singularity name can only be seen when you remove the strap. The Grey Eminence is currently wearing the Orlando date and weighs in at 83.4 grams. I would consider the strap to be a bit on the large side. I have a 7-inch wrist and I've had to make use of the first hole on the strap for a somewhat loose fit. If your wrist is on the smaller side, then be sure to mention it during the order process for some added punch holes on your band. Being a bracelet fan, I have the metal band option on the red accent. It's a multi-link all-brushed stainless steel with a signed double push button release butterfly clasp that will add a £100 cost and a little more weight to your watch. The links are held together with screw pins and should be a doddle to resize, provided you have a 1mm size screwdriver. As I have the watch on loan, I've decided not to attack the screws with my screwdriver. In keeping with the crossbar system, the end links are straight. Fitted end links would be my preference. Although I have 2 dials to choose from, their fundamental structure is the same on both watches. I think it only fair to look at the one with a greater complication, namely the Grey Eminence with the added date. It's also my favourite of the two. There are 5 elements to every Singularity watch. Working from the outside in, the first element is the fixed hour disc. The hour disc on the Grey Eminence is finished with a soft brushed sunray effect, what they describe as electroplated black gold, with white Arabic numerals. There's also a milled out rectangular frame with rounded corners at the 6 o'clock position, which shows an easy to read enlarged date, red Arabics on a shimmering silvery white date wheel. If like me you'd prefer not to have the date, then no biggie, everything on the Singularity is an option. The one thing that will remain constant is the Swiss made text below the 6 o'clock position. Don't forget, this is a Swiss made watch. You may be surprised to hear that the next inner ring isn't considered part of the dial. The minute disc is part of the movement. It's unique to Singularity and it's protected under a US patent. The anti-clockwise rotating disc is a microblasted black satin with white 5-minute numerals and matching white indices for the remaining minutes. The next inward disc is classed as the center dial. It's a black ring decorated with Côte de Genève stripes that plays host to the Singularity branding in bold white text below the 12 o'clock position. The final disc on the dial is a circular brushed black ring with white second indicators. At the heart of the dial is the final fifth element of the Singularity, a brushed rhodium-coated one-hand indicator. It's this broad sharp-pointed hand with added spyglass cutout and kite-shaped tip that ties the hour and minute tracks together, allowing you to tell the time in one location, more precise than any single-handed watch that came before. Now, what I'm about to tell you may come as a bit of a shock. The Singularity has a second hand. Look, it's right there at the centre of the dial, sitting on top of the one-hand indicator. It's cleverly disguised in red and silver as something that would pass for a compass needle. But as it ticks around the seconds ring once every minute, then I'm pretty sure you could class it as a seconds hand. When I questioned Steve about this additional pointer, he explained that the passing of time on a one-handed watch is less obvious and people like to see that their watch is working. The movement of the needle lets people know that the watch is ticking. They did consider removing the additional pointer and replacing it with a decorative cap, but customers favour its presence on the dial. I quite like the irony of its location. In astrological terms, a singularity is a black hole that swallows light and matter and distorts time and gravity. At the centre of this black hole is a compass that brings you back to reality. I suggested to Steve that they could replace the needle with a spinning Singularity logo, which was food for thought. He even suggested you might see that on the OHI 5. In any case, if a customer would prefer to forgo the extra indicator, it would be an easy omission. I also asked about the two screw heads at the 3 and 9 o'clock position of the seconds ring and questioned their alignment. I was told that the screws are not aesthetic. They are there to hold all the components of the dial in place, a vital part of the watch's construction and not meant to be decorative. Steve suggested that the screws may be switched out on later models, possibly with hex screws, which I think would have better continuity with their use elsewhere on the caseback and the strap crossbar. I do have some reservations over the pricing of the Singularity. Starting at £1,900, it puts them in the same market as more established brands like Oris and Tudor. Pretty stiff competition for a virgin brand still finding its feet. They do, however, offer a very bespoke service, allowing you pretty much to have full control over the design of your watch. There are other brands such as Undone that give you a modicum of modability at a fraction of the price, but Singularity quote over 12,000 possible configurations. The OHI might be considered a modern-day Savile Row suit. Yes, you can buy off the peg and save yourself some cash, or you can sit down with Singularity and end up with a truly unique watch, only limited by your taste, imagination and budget. It's fair to say that the Singularity is not meant to be a mass-produced watch. Peter tells me they had a customer who wanted the dial of his OHI 4 to be a certain shade of purple. Many weeks were spent finding the exact hue, and the watch is currently in production with delivery in the coming weeks. How many watch brands offer that type of service? He also lets slip that they are working with American sports clubs, designing watches with team colours. Sounds like a home run to me. The box of goodies that I've shared with you today are on loan and come courtesy of Adam from Hillier Jewellers. He's a fan and supporter of the channel. If you'd also like to support the channel, then please consider subscribing and hit the notifications button. Thanks. Hillier Jewellers will be the sole distributor for Singularity watches in the UK. If you want to try the likes of the Grey Eminence or the red accent on your wrist, then you'll need to pop along to the family-run business to try them for size. Adam will be able to take orders and help you design your watch. From a personal point of view, Adam is a great guy, and a watch enthusiast. If you're looking for a deal on a Seiko, Citizen, Bulliver or a Tissot, then they are some of the many brands available from his store. The Singularity brand is still growing, and they hope to have more storefront distributors joining them soon. Until that comes to fruition, the best way to secure your Singularity will be via their website. You can buy one of their off-the-shelf designs, configure your own watch, or have a chat with the design team. It's entirely up to you how much you want to get involved. Once ordered, your watch will be delivered within 4 weeks, a little longer if you choose to have a customized component. It will arrive in a leather case and come with a 30-day returns policy and a 2-year guarantee. If you're not entirely happy with a particular element of your watch, then Singularity will happily swap it out for something more fitting to your needs. They also offer a special care program which will allow you to completely reconfigure your watch when it goes in for a service every 4 to 5 years. How many other brands can you name that offer a similar service? The Singularity is an intriguing and unique watch. I did have some concerns from photos that I'd seen that the ball dial would wear big and be somewhat overpowering. I needn't have worried. It looks very comfortable on my wrist. I may have trouble taking it off. I'm trying to be objective, but if you hadn't already guessed, I'm actually quite smitten with the Singularity design, the name and the branding. I do have a minor niggle with regards to screw alignment, but the standout issue for me is the price. I think the majority of you viewers will think it quite steep for a brand so new to the market. But then I know there are those of you out there who will consider it a small price to pay for the privilege of owning a one-of-a-kind watch. Let me know what you think of the Singularity and the one-hand indicator system. Are you a fan, or do you prefer a standard 3-hander? Better still, if you own a Singularity, share your experience with a brand and help others to make an informed decision. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.